Welcome to the Bayesian Conspiracy. I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
I'm Steven Zuber.
I am Jay Sticky.
And we actually got a comment on our faux intro where we all pretended to be other people last time. That someone was like, damn it was my first episode. You guys really screwed me over.
Yeah, we should definitely keep doing it.
No, we should not.
I thought it would be really funny if we just, switch the first and last names, as many ways as possible. I forget what a 3x3 is, but...
But, yeah, I guess we're sorry about that. Really didn't think that would be anyone's first episode. And now we will continue onto a regular episode. We always do feedback after the sequence posts, right?
No,
I don't know if we always do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Let's do feedback first.
Feedback first this time. Okay, then. Real quick, as long as we're talking about people giving us feedback, we have OsIV, I think, or maybe Os4. I'm not sure. This is from our subreddit. Commenting on the IQ Shredder discussion, I feel an important possibility was overlooked. When people with high IQs do not come to IQ Shredder cities, do those people reproduce at higher rates? I'm suspicious that the people attracted to IQ Shredders have innate qualities that make them less likely to have offspring wherever they are. The IQ Shredders may not be causing them to have fewer children, but rather concentrating people who are already unlikely to have children in one place. I thought that was an interesting thing to bring to the subject. I think there were some arguments as to why living in dense cities actually does reduce reproduction rate.
It might compound the issue, but that's a really good point. I think in general, this is a thing I think is true, that more highly educated and then therefore probably more high IQ people tend to have fewer offspring anyway.
They do nowadays. That wasn't the case in the past.
Well, but we're worried about now.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, I don't think it's necessarily just the case that if you have higher IQ, you're less likely to reproduce because, before the 1900s or so, it wasn't the case. Smarter people.
I still don't think it's the case for all, anyone over 100 or whatever the average is.
Yeah.
I thought you meant an age. I'm pretty sure they're not reproducing. Sorry.
Not yet. Growth mindset.
Yeah. No, definitely, is sort of I don't know, jumping the gun in terms of causality. There's a lot of other things that, wow, no examples come to mind immediately, but where, it looks like this thing is a problem because it's causing people to behave in this way, and then it turns out, when you dig deeper into it, actually it turns out that people are already predisposed to behave this way, are doing the thing.
There's a good example of that in students who go to charter schools tend to have better outcomes.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one.
So then you do a little deeper digging, and it turns out students who apply to charter schools and don't get in also have better outcomes. It's being the kind of person who cares about that kind of thing, or the kind of person with parents who care about that sort of thing. But Either way, yeah, the causal error wasn't obvious. So
it's one of the, now I'm thinking of examples, but it makes me a little bit more unsure about what is it called, radical unschooling, whether that's as great as I want to believe and currently think that it is, because maybe just the kinds of parents who would radically unschool their kids are already the kind of parents that would have had smart kids. But I think that there are enough other examples of this being a sort of a natural experiment, I forget if it was in Ghana, but there was some poor city where they just put a bunch of laptops somewhere, and the kids ended up teaching themselves and getting into universities just by tinkering with the laptop and teaching each other.
I remember that article. I also, a few weeks later, saw some follow-up where they said the case was grossly overstated in the original one.
Oh,
I know.
It struck me as implausible.
Replication crisis again.
Yeah.
It struck me as implausible just to begin with, just because the idea that you just drop a crate full of laptops and people figure out, how they work and how to do something interesting on them. I mean, where would they recharge them? They have to have some technology around.
Well, I think they set it up in a building with power.
Fair enough.
But it sounded really plausible to me because I'm mostly self-taught, and a lot of people I know are. And
back in the day, they didn't have places where they taught you programming. You had to find an old teach yourself programming manual and read through it yourself.
I still wonder how much, I'm getting very distracted by this person banging on this window with a ladder in the background.
Oh my god, that poor fucking window.
In case people are picking up on anything on the feed, there's people doing construction outside of Eneasz's house, so...
And if that window has a screen, he's fucking that screen all up.
Is indeed. I'd be okay leaving some of that in, it's funny.
Or Patreon content.
They want to just get... It's funny, we punish the patrons. They get to see how the sausage is made.
Well, that's what I love. I love blooper reels, and I like being able to get the behind the scenes of stuff I like, so looks like he's leaning in on the...
Yes, he is. I mean, the glass is strong enough to take it, unless it's already been structurally weakened.
That's the screen.
Yeah.
This
guy, like, he could just move it over a couple of feet, and there's like wood that he could lean it against. Oh no! Don't fall. It doesn't look stable. What's he even doing?
Whatever. Anyways, let's get back to this podcast we're trying to record today.
Glad I don't have a job where falling off a ladder is a real risk.
My dad fell off a ladder and broke his back, and then like it healed and he was fine, and he like continued. I don't know. He's still like 61 or 2, and still up on roofs doing crazy shit with his ladder made of wood that he's had since before I was born.
Did he not have permanent? Like oftentimes you break your back, you have permanent pain for the rest of your life, or some kind of crippling or something.
My dad like broke his skull and had like it fused together into this strange ridge on the top of his head during some childhood accident, and he's like, well, now I can never like trim my hair too short or it'll look like I have a weird bone mohawk, but on the other hand I've been able to be hit by like 2x4s and all kinds of shit, and just like so it's kind of a superpower.
It's got to teach us all how to break our skulls that way.
No, I think he's just a like genetic mutant who isn't able to be 62 and still like doing hard carpentry labor.
All right, like get some blood from your dad and submit it somewhere so that we can reverse engineer this.
Half of his genetics.
Do you have the half that lets you be that awesome in your 60s?
Hope so.
Okay.
We'll find out.
Maybe we can take your blood.
like
quick, grab him.
Maybe I'll just get better with age. Hopefully.
Hope so.
Like a fine wine.
Exactly. Speaking of fine wines and things that age very well, let's go to our less wrong posts.
Yeah, we've got some sequences for you.
Yeah.
This week. And
the first one we have is adaptation executors, not fitness maximizers, which it sticks in your mind and it helps to, it was a thing that helped change my view on how humans work by a fair bit when I first read it. Although I was still pretty young when I first read it, but I think this is a really handy one.
It stuck with me. I think it's one of those ones that has a pithy title, even if it's lots of syllables, and you remember often enough to implement that. Some of them are somewhat esoteric or whatever, and oh yeah, I remember reading that before, but then you forget about it a year later.
Mm-hmm.
This one I never forgot, so.
It is actually important to have like memorable and descriptive titles for that purpose, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sequences tend to be pretty good at that.
The title of this one is the TLDR.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yep.
Animals are adaptation executors, not fitness maximizers.
Exactly.
So when you see an animal doing something that doesn't look like it makes sense for its reproductive fitness, ask yourself, would that sort of behavior be adaptive to its ancestors? And often the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the example they start with is just food and the fact that micronutrients that were really abundant in leaves and nuts are absent from bread, but our taste buds don't complain. A soup of ice cream is a super stimulus containing more sugar, fat, and salt than anything in the ancestral environment. So, like, basically,
our taste buds picked up on the things that were really rare and make us want to seek those out.
Yeah,
and
like,
so we don't notice when we're not getting micronutrients because we didn't have that problem limiting us in the distant past, but we did have problems of caloric restriction limiting us. So that's why we adapted to seek those things out.
Yeah, like, getting into real quick the book The Hungry Brain, Stephen Goyenet, he goes even deeper into that, where specifically we have little buttons on our tongue that tell us when things are salty, meaty, sugary, or fatty, and these are the things that turn off our, what is it called? Satiety center in our brain, the part that tells you that you're full. And then, like, we as a society are like, why this obesity epidemic? Like, but meanwhile, we've also invented McDonald's, which just cranks out for incredibly cheap, like, the highest, like, most hypothalamically exciting food.
They have 100 billion served. You have to respect that.
Wait, have they started to colonize the stars already, or?
No, it's a reference from Worth the Candle.
Well, and it's a fact.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not that they've served every person on Earth. They've served, on average, more than whatever, right?
Yeah.
I didn't say
I have
that
eaten
correctly.
McDonald's more than once in my life, so
right.
I count as more than one as part of the 100 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not 100 billion people served, 100 billion meals delivered, right, to customers.
Yeah.
Okay. Shit, I had something funny for this. It's gone. Never mind, sorry.
But you'll find it in like 30 seconds. That's what always happens to me.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, sorry. I thought it would come back when I started the sentence.
Yeah, it's all good. It's probably something about sex. All the funny things in life are about sex.
Or pooping, apparently.
Or pooping, yeah.
I just, like, rewatched all of Rick and Morty, and I was
Nice.
just like, there's way more poop jokes in this than I remember.
Yeah. All right. So going on, he says, no human being with the deliberate goal of maximizing their alleles' inclusive genetic fitness would ever eat a cookie unless they were starving. But individual organisms are best thought of as adaptation executors, not fitness maximizers. Where do taste buds come from? Not from an intelligent designer visualizing their consequences, but from a frozen history of ancestry. Adam liked sugar and ate an apple and reproduced. But the objective consequence of this is that in the modern first world, the desire to eat more chocolate, the plan to eat more chocolate, eating more chocolate leads to getting fat, leads to getting fewer dates, which leads to reproducing less successfully because we're not maximizing our fitness, we're executing adaptations from the past.
And the funny thing is that people crave chocolate because in its natural form, cacao, like I actually just eat raw cacao nibs and they are considered a superfood. So if you ran into a cacao pod in the ancestral environment, it would have been like just tons of nutrients, a bit of caffeine, theobromide, like. But then we, like, as a society, came along and we're like, but what if we added milk and sugar to this? Mm-hmm. And then what if we just took the cacao out of it entirely and made it a chocolate-flavored candy?
Yeah.
I tried cacao nibs after that episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and they're disgusting.
I love them, but I also like bitter, weird things, so, yeah.
I remember the funny thing about super stimuli food.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if it was a shower thought on Reddit or if it was like a picture of a tweet, but it was like, the average nacho cheese Dorito contains more explosive nacho cheese flavor than a king could have ever enjoyed in his lifetime.
I saw that post too. It was like...
And I think that's true, right?
It must be.
I think
there was an explosive nacho cheese flavor 300 years ago.
Well, yeah, I think it was specifically saying that like one single Dorito contains more spices than like the average English peasant in, I forget whatever century, would have ever experienced in their life.
Oh, really?
So okay. you got like a real version of that kind of thought. This was just a funny, stupid one about like nacho cheese flavor.
Yeah. To riff off your bitter, weird things, I only like bitter, weird things when they're hot people.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, I have that one too, so.
Okay. Alrighty. But yeah, that was it's short, sweet, and, sticks in your head. The next one is evolutionary psychology, which, again, the should have had Wes on here for this. It starts out...
Still can.
No, it's a little late at this point.
Well, not for this one, but yeah. If the listeners are interested in hearing us, like, argue with Wes about whether or not evolutionary psychology is valid, like, let us know in the Discord /Reddit /other places where you can leave comments.
Especially if we have an EvoPsych expert.
That would be cool.
It would. And if nothing else, it would be fun for us, which, I'm always for doing things that are fun for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. It starts out, the phrase reproductive organ is redundant. All organs are reproductive organs. Where do birds' wings come from? An evolution of birds fairy who thinks that flying is really neat? The birds' wings are there because they contributed to the bird's ancestral reproduction.
And this observation also holds true of the brain, the most complex organ known to biology. Some brain organs are directly reproductive, like lust. Others are indirectly reproductive, like anger.
Yes. He just used the C word. Well, one of the C words. Complex.
Oh.
Complexity.
Yeah.
Well, but he's not saying complexity is the answer. He's just saying this organ is complex, which I think is, obviously true.
It doesn't give me much, I nitpicking for no reason. I like the, so before like the EvoPsych part of this, I like just the, this was a lot of stuff that I became exposed to during like the New Atheism days and all the talk of whatever, intelligent design, blind watchmaker, etc., etc.
Oh, yeah, one of their like big talking points for a while was that biology is just infinitely complex. So complex that it must have been designed, and there's no way we could ever possibly understand it, which means that a god must have done it.
Right, what use is half an eye. And like, they didn't understand that evolution...
Turns out pretty useful. Turns out pretty useful.
Yeah,
it turns out,
like evolution 1/100th of an eye is better than having 0 eyes.
That's right. And evolution in reverse isn't best simulated by like taking an existing eyeball and cutting it in half. Right? So you think of like, what use is it to have vague photoreceptors? Well, kind of helpful if you see a shadow move over you and you're some stupid organism that just, knows to flee at that, right?
Twitch when the lighting changes.
I wouldn't call that a stupid organism. That's the one that survived and reproduced, probably.
I mean, stupid compared to Steven.
Yeah. And you know.
Ooh, that was a little mean.
No, it was mean to the organism.
Stupid
Steven's
compared
really
to
smart.
Steven.
Okay, then I just sort of heard that in reverse in my head and was like, "Whoa, that's out of character." Idiot.
I heard it in reverse too, and still agreed with it. So I don't know what this says about me and the stupid organism. Am I the stupid organism all along?
Back on the topic. Oh man, sorry. Just aside, that reminds me of people that would like write into Slate Star Codex being really worried that their IQ wasn't high enough. And I did a bunch of statistics on it, and it seems like it's just like, friend,
you did
please read what you
statistics
just
on
wrote.
something. Yeah.
The fact that you read this blog and know enough to be worried about this means that you're probably good.
But you were going to say something about reproductive biology and the new atheism wars?
That was basically just it about because he's talking about like where do wings come from and stuff, and like having half a wing is kind of like whatever, like flying squirrels, right?
Mm-hmm. Penguins.
And, yeah. Well, penguins.
They use them to swim.
Yeah, they've got that.
Sorta.
That. I guess I was just thinking of like when you're thinking about like flying. I can imagine in 2 million years squirrels that can fly by flapping their appendages, right?
Bats?
It'd be weird. Well, I'm just thinking like existing flying squirrels, give them 2 million years of accelerated evolution, and then see what they look like. That's how wings came to be, right? Mm-hmm. Turns out gliding is useful, and then gliding is part of flying. So
saw the I guess not new at this point, but it was new to me a few years ago. Idea that wings helped with running too, and so a lot of the original use of wings could have been just to aid in fleeing from predators,
like increasing, just like running and flapping your arms.
Yeah, I
increases
guess so.
your momentum,
Apparently.
or lets you like leap.
Maybe
longer.
your control too. Like if you can raise one arm up for draft and take a hard left turn or something, right?
I suppose.
Yeah. Ostriches are dangerous and they can go at high speeds, so...
Ostriches are descendants of, like, the biggest predator after the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the terror bird.
Cool.
And cassowaries.
They're fierce.
Yeah. Birds are dinosaurs.
Yes.
All right.
So, he continues on to say that the neural architecture, or the neural circuitry of anger, is a reproductive organ as surely as your liver. Anger exists in Homo sapiens because angry ancestors had more kids. And this goes back to the previous 2 episodes that we were talking about with evolution, that if it exists in you, it exists because it led to your ancestors having more kids. There's no other way it could have gotten there, italicized.
But hold on, are you saying that when I'm angry, I'm subconsciously trying to have children? That's not what I'm thinking about after someone punches me in the face.
Well, you think you're not thinking that, but you are. No, his answer is no, bold no, all caps no with an exclamation point. The cause of an adaptation, the shape of an adaptation, and the consequence of an adaptation are all separate things.
This will tie in nicely to today's episode, actually.
That usually ends up happening by accident, and that's kind of cool.
Could it just be that all the sequences apply pretty well to most things?
Perhaps.
Could be. Or, we're rationalists, so we'd like things that are kind of interesting in this domain.
Yeah. The human brain, in addition to being an artifact historically produced by evolution, is also a mind capable of bearing its own intentions, purposes, desires, goals, and plans. Cognitive causes are ontologically distinct from evolutionary causes. They're made out of a different kind of stuff. Cognitive causes are made of neurons. Evolutionary causes are made of ancestors.
Yeah, and so therefore the cognitive cause of your anger is something that's happened in front of you that makes you feel angry, and therefore you take a certain action. But the evolutionary cause of why you have that circuitry is because people who had that happen to them and trigger, violence or whatever it is that their anger triggers, motivation to do something about it, had more children. And so that is a different cause in an ontological sense than, seeing something and having your neurons process it as outrageous.
Yeah, and I like to think of this as, like, taking anger as an example. It's there for a reason, and the reason is, like, a bunch of... Like, you can just keep saying that there's a reason beneath that reason. So it's not like, I don't know, when I first encountered the idea that, like, humans do art and dance and poetry and philosophy to get laid, and I was just like, no, that makes everything meaningless. And, like, first of all, no, like, just because it's there for a reason doesn't mean that we can't value it for its own sake. In fact, as a species, we clearly value things more than just reproducing. Like, we invented condoms and birth control for, like...
I think he actually, yeah.
So we can do more, art and dance and music.
Yeah.
So, but also, like, anger is there because someone punched you in the face, and that could be like needing to be able to get angry enough to defend yourself will let you survive and or like protect your friends and loved ones. Or it like creates greater social cohesion if people can't get away with going around punching people in the face because they know that people are going to punch them back. So it makes us have more coherent societies, which leads to people having more children.
And as a reminder, it is an adaptation execution, not necessarily a fixed fitness maximization. So even though it may have been adaptive in the past, it may not be adaptive anymore to be violent and or angry or whatever. So
yeah, we're probably miscalibrated in like 2021 for how angry we should be at each other.
Yeah.
Road rage, for example.
Yes. Anger may be far less adaptive now than it was in the ancestral environment. And as an example of that, he takes Stalin. Somewhere in Stalin's brain, there were neural circuits that rewarded pleasurably the exercise of power, and circuits that detected anticipations of increases and decreases in power. If there were nothing in Stalin's brain that correlated to power, no little light that went on for political command and off for political weakness, then how would Stalin's brain have known to be corrupted by power? And this was during commenting on the whole, power corrupts people thing. Like, how would brains know to be corrupted by power if it didn't have that sort of...
Apparently being corrupted by power is good for reproductive fitness.
Can
Genghis Khan.
But, yeah, right? But certainly not a thing that we want to encourage anymore.
At least in the evil dictator way. Like, wanting power, becoming a really great politician, and getting lots of notoriety for, like, being... the best president ever is not something that I think we'd want to discourage.
I think we could all agree that being corrupted by power by being the best podcasters is definitely a thing we want to encourage.
Yes.
I
wanted to try to do a maniacal laugh. Okay, but I was going to say, but like, Idiosh is probably better at that than me. Thank you.
Sure.
You don't really get good at it until you sit at home alone and practice, and then you feel just as crazy as possible.
You got to do it in front of a mirror.
Yeah.
I feel like that actually probably would be fun, like for increasing like self-esteem, to just sort of like practice evil laughter.
Yeah, maniacally laugh on the drive home. It'll be really funny.
Life hack, guys.
Yeah.
What are we reading next time?
Next time, we will be talking about protein reinforcement and DNA consequentialism, and Thou Art God Shatter.
Yeah, I already read those, because I thought those were the ones we were doing today. Whoops.
Cool.
Lately have been running into planning a fallacy, like, accidentally helping me out, like, accidentally doing it too well, and that's been kind of cool.
Last night, I sat down to read the 2 sequence posts and our main subject post, and I saw I had already read and taken notes on all the sequences. And I was like, sweet! I only have to do half the work now.
Yeah, fist bump your past self.
That's right. Always looking out for future me. It's the way to go. Because future me's going to be real me soon. Anyways, on to our main subject today, which is a less wrong post by not Eliezer, because it was in the future, I guess, our past, but the future of the sequences we're reading. It was opened up to other people to post things on it. This one was by Nate Soares.
Actually, fun thing, I think I remember when Eliezer was on Sam Harris's podcast, Harris asked him, is that the correct pronunciation? And he's like, as far as I know. So
yeah.
Nobody knows. It's the same guy who did the Replacing Guilt.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. Nate Soares of Replacing Guilt fame.
Mm-hmm. Which I got a tremendous amount of value out of.
I can't wait to reread that, because I did too, but I also have forgotten a lot of it.
You don't have to reread it, because Gianluca Truda, I don't know I'm mispronouncing his last name. Gianluca wrote no last names, did an audiobook. It's available on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts.
It was still updating when I found out about it. There were like 2 or 3 episodes, but I should check back, because I'm sure there's more now.
It's been done for a while, and he actually released a just full transcript, or like a combined episode of all of it. So if you want to listen to them all in one gigantic episode, you can do that, or do one at a time.
Glorious.
Strong recommend. He did a great job reading them, and I really enjoyed that way of consuming them as well.
Yeah, let's try to remember to shove a link in our links that we do on these podcasts.
Excellent.
Because I bet a lot of other people would get a ton of value out of that.
Yeah. So he posted it on Less Wrong. He also has his own blog, Minding Our Way, which is where he originally did Replacing Guilt at, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a series of blog posts, but it's been collated into kind of its own little thing.
But we already did an episode on replacing guilt, which we should also link to.
But this time, backed by popular demand, Newcomb-like problems
are the norm. Yeah, so this is great. This is one of the things I love about rationalists is that we get wrapped up in things like Newcomb's problem, and we decided to come back to it because this was, I thought, really interesting and kind of touched on Stephen's point of like, how is this remotely applicable to the real world in any way?
In the opening paragraph, you sent this and you're like, what do you think about this for the next episode? And I'm like, this exactly addresses my complaint. Yeah. So there's fewer real world examples than I would have liked, but I'm sure we'll explore the ones that are given and extrapolate on them. So.
Okay, great. And hopefully this will be the last time we touch on Newcomb problems for a while because it's nice to change up our subjects over time. But yes, this post is called Newcomblike Problems Are the Norm, where he argues that Newcomb-like problems are the norm. What? Most problems that humans face in real life are Newcomb-like.
What a good word.
Yes. He says that specifically the Newcomb problem, it's problems like that with perfect mind readers are the domain where these problems are easiest to see. However, they arise naturally whenever an agent is in a situation where others have knowledge about its decision process via some mechanism that is not under its direct control.
Nate Soares is so smart because I was sort of also, I think, where Stephen was about, okay, I'm enjoying arguing / like mentally masturbating about this thing, but also I think it's kind of silly and never going to really affect me that much. And in this first paragraph, I was just like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mentally got off on the previous conversations as well, but it's nice to, ground it. So here we are.
Yeah. And just because that was a lot of jargon, an agent is like a person. And when others have knowledge of your decision process, that's, just others know how you're going to make decisions via some mechanism that's not under that agent's control, some mechanisms that are not under your control.
There's a lot deeper that we could get into things like game theory and decision theory, but
yeah.
Let's maybe try to define terms as we come to them.
That's a good idea.
Or else we'll be talking about that forever.
He starts out with another toy problem, a easy, simple one where you can see the thing starkly, the mirror token trade, talking about a causal decision theory agent. Agents, the mirror token trade is you have a token, you can give it to the person across from you. If you do, it'll be doubled, so they'll get 2. They are given the same choice, so that if you both trade your tokens, you both get 2. But if the other person trades their token and you hold on to yours, you get 3 and they get 0. The agent spawned the causal decision theory agent would think thusly. Agents that are spawned from my template give their tokens away, or they keep their tokens. If agents spawned from my template give their tokens away, then I better keep mine, so I can take advantage of the opponent, thus having 3. If, instead, agents spawned from my template keep their tokens, then I had better keep mine, otherwise I won't get any money at all. And do we all see what the problem with this thinking is?
Go ahead and spell it out.
I mean, I think it just, explains it in the next paragraph anyway, but I'm not sure if you wanted us to try to guess, because I'm anchoring on what Nate said since I already read it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, again, to me, just broadly, agent spawned from my template. Like, this is, we're outside reality and we're back in mental masturbation mode, right? Mm-hmm. That's to me, that's been the hang up the whole time with these problems.
Okay, so you didn't even want to bother with that one?
No, let's keep going with it. But it's because there's more to discover here. But I mean, keep rolling.
This reminds me though of what is that like game theoretic thing where there are different types of players and you put them on a matrix.
Are we talking about the Prisoner's Dilemma robots?
I think that was the one. It kind of makes me think of that where
it's a very
one of the sort of failure modes of decision theory was assuming that humans behave rationally, and in fact, when you study actual humans, they do things for weird reasons you couldn't anticipate. Like, we're not actually utility maximizers. But
I want to plant a flag in that they behave irrationally and that they're doing things for weird reasons.
Well, but irrationally as far as, like, game theory is, or, like, math is based, it's definitely not irrational. Like, a lot of people are, if you have the game where you are given $10 and then you have to choose how much to give to the other person, and then there's some other things, It turns out people aren't trying to maximize the amount of money they get all the time. Sometimes they're trying to, if they're in a culture that values sharing, they'll try to make sure that, like, they give the other person a fair deal. Or if they're in a culture that values, like, humbleness and giving, they'll give the other person all of the money.
Exactly. There was another Newcomb problem that somebody in the Discord tried to help illustrate the point with me, and that was Parfit's Hitchhiker, where I'm in the desert, I'm out of water, and I'm dying, and some asshole drives up and says, I can see that you're dying. I'll take you to town if and only if you agree to give me $1,000 when we get there. And I'm an expert micro-expression reader, so if I detect that you're lying, I'll leave you here in the desert. So you have to say, yes, that you'll give me $1,000, and mean it. And I would pay the guy $1,000 when I got there, even though this is how it's like a Newcomb problem. Once I get to town, why would I want to pay him? I'm already to town. I can get all the water I need, right?
Yeah.
I would agree to pay him for all kinds of reasons.
Probably because you don't want to die.
Well, so aside from like his ability to predict and all that stuff, I'd pay him maybe out of gratitude. I feel like $1,000 is a pretty high amount to charge somebody to save their life when it costs you nothing, but
costs him probably some gas and maybe damage on his car if he's driving around in a desert.
If he was already going through the desert and he's already going to town.
I'm just being
so I mean,
don't
but
worry about it.
No, but like the kind of guy who would charge me $1,000 seems like the kind of psychopath who would kill me if I didn't pay him when we got to town. So like, I'd pay them if it was a reasonable amount of money out of, hey, thank you, I really appreciate it.
Well, what's reasonable depends on how much money you have.
That too. If I don't have $1,000, then again, but so I bring this up because there are all kinds of good reasons to pay this guy. The more grounded the example, the more good reasons I can think of to do the thing that sounds quote unquote irrational if I'm a perfect homo economicus, right?
Who no one is, except for maybe a few freaks. Economics majors, just kidding.
So you're saying
David.
The rational choice is to give him the $1,000 anyway?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think that there are lots of other good reasons. I don't want my reputation to go out there as a liar, etc. Maybe it's, problems on Earth in real life aren't so constrained as, like, picture a perfectly spherical prisoner's dilemma in a box, right?
Okay.
So it's, again, this is a weird person. They might kill me if I don't give them $1,000 because who charges $1,000 to drive, let someone sit in the bed of your truck while they're going to town?
Maybe by paying them the $1,000, though, you are promoting a norm of such mercenary behavior.
Or like, maybe you're promoting a norm where people give the person $1,000, get their life saved, and the consequence is that more people live. And more people are incentivized to save lives.
If it would encourage people to randomly drive through the desert looking for dying people, then maybe. I had a friend I remember who I
hope was not in this situation.
No, but he came from the East Coast, which I only say because I have this prejudice in my head of people from the East Coast as being kind of abrasive and prickish.
It's true.
But maybe for good reason, because it sounds like the East Coast is a place where you need to be that way to survive, which is why I don't ever want to live there. But anyways, he I don't remember how this conversation came up, but it was something about like sharing donuts at the office or something. He was like, yeah, if someone brought in a dozen donuts and offered me half a donut, I'd be like, fuck you. I don't want your half a donut. Like, at least offer me a whole fucking donut, And I was like, but you get a free half donut as opposed to 0 donuts. He's like, no, fuck that guy being an asshole, giving me half a donut. And I was like, huh, okay, well, all right. But that was very much that same sort of thing, I think. It was an ultimatum game analog where he was like, you have given me too little. I would rather have nothing than encourage this sort of possible behavior in the future.
Yeah, I noticed I only brought up examples of positive, or I guess like what I am sort of morally saying is like positive behaviors like sharing or humbleness, giving, but also it's pretty much been shown that there's a point to which even in like the kindest cultures people will defect in order to punish the other person for what they consider to be bad behavior.
Right.
And that promotes a culture where people don't just get away with bad behavior.
Or more donuts for me. I mean, if it's an office that has 24 people and I buy a dozen donuts out of the goodness of my heart and everyone gets half a donut if they want one, then it's weird for this guy to be, no, I want a whole one. Well, you don't have to have anything. I brought this for you if you want it, but you don't get any more than anyone else.
Sounds like that guy may have had other stuff going on.
Also, there was definitely not 24 people in the office.
Was it a lot more or a lot less?
A lot less.
Oh, so someone had like a dozen donuts at their desk, And they're like, I'm going to go through all of these, or most of these today, but I'll hand out dribs and drabs to people as I see fit.
I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, so again,
I don't remember the specifics.
The more we constrain this, the more absurd it sounds, which is sort of my thing with a lot of thought experiments. But let's push on.
When you brought that up, it kind of makes me think, if it's their donuts they bought to eat themselves and they're offering you half of one, that, like, doesn't, I don't know. Why is that a snub? They're their donuts.
This is one of those things that could divide an entire office and lead to bloodshed. Depending on, which side you come down on this. If no, you idiot, take half the donut.
If Eneasz offered me $10 and Bill Gates offered me $10 and it was for free, for no reason, I would, assuming I wanted $10, I'd happily take it from either of them. Right. Even though Bill Gates could give me a lot more than $10, it's like, what do I care? It's $10, right? Why would I say no? It's like, no, you're Bill Gates. You should give me 1,000.
I think people actually behave that way, though. Like, there's some people that absolutely just hate, like, I know Jeff Bezos in particular, but, like, Elon Musk, even Bill Gates.
I just saw a couple days ago someone sharing this meme about one of those unpopular billionaires who donated $50 million to build something or another. And they were like, $50 million? Yeah, fuck his $50 million. Take the rest of his money. I was like, Jesus, okay.
You might be thinking of Mark Zuckerberg, who gave the largest hospital donation ever, I think of $75 million. And
people crunched the numbers about how much of that wealth it equals and how much more he could have given, and therefore he's a bad person.
Or just like, why didn't you give more? And it's like, well, I already gave more than anyone else ever has to a hospital. Like, I don't know. I get where they're coming from, but not in the donut case. Anyway, where are we at with the...
okay, so neither of you answered this, but I will answer my thing. As soon as I read it, I was like, this agent is completely fucking brain dead. What is their issue? Because the agent, if it had even 2 IQ points, would immediately see that both agents are made from the same template. And so when you make a choice, you're making choice for both of you, because whatever you do is what agents made from that template do.
And the agents know that, right?
Well, yeah, it says agent spawned from my template will, and then extrapolates and somehow comes to the idea that he should keep it should keep its token, because that way it will have either 1 or 3, when the correct answer is you're going to have 1, because the other guy is a mirror copy of you. He's going to do the same thing. Whereas if you give yours away, the other guy's having the exact same reasoning, you're going to have 2.
This is why, like, this is a prisoner's dilemma problem.
Very close. Yeah.
Except no one's going to jail. They're just losing money. But it's like, if me and my identical copy broke into a bank or robbed it, and the cops catch us, and they can't prove the bank robbery unless one of us snitches, but they can get us on conspiracy to commit bank robbery, if we both keep our mouths shut. Like, I know me, and I would say, no, I'm not going to tell. I'd rather serve the 2 months for conspiracy to commit crime rather than the 6 years for committing the crime, right?
Yeah.
So, this is the kind of thing where if you're dealing with, like, agents that are identical, it doesn't seem to even be a real problem.
Yeah.
Well, there I can see the irrationality.
Yeah, that's the thing. But according to causal decision theory, he should keep its token, because what he decides cannot change what the other person is going to decide.
So, I suppose, and I guess it should be pointed out, too, that this post isn't just about, like, Newcomb problems and their reasonableness and their applicability to real life. It's about how Newcomb-like problems present issues for causal decision theory in particular.
Yes.
But there are other decision theories that make this less of a problem.
Right.
Like,
it's specifically advocating for other decision theories. But causal decision theories are the ones that say you should one box in Newcomb's problem and 1 box in the clear Newcomb's problem and all those other things. Because what has happened in the past cannot influence, or what you're doing now cannot influence what happened in the past.
I found a good framing of Newcomb's problem, like the box, the original Newcomb problem that I liked. I mean, and this is like an empiric decision theory rather than a causal one. If I'm presented with the initial dilemma, which box or boxes do I take? I'm basically asking myself, which group do I want to be in? The group that got $1,000 or the group that got $1 million? Historically, 99.9998% of people who took the 1 box became millionaires. I'd rather be in that group. So based on the evidence of that I've accrued thus far, based, the historical data, I'll will 1 box. Right. So that is.
But you said you wouldn't 1 box if it was clear.
But if I could see the contents of it?
Yeah, and it was empty.
If I could see that it was empty, that is also my empiric decision theory says let's go on the data I have, which is I can see an empty box.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think I'm being consistent.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that problem, the original Newcomb problem, and even the sort of iteration of it. Yeah, the first two iterations of the Newcomb problem sort of don't worry me or feel very applicable to my life, but what they bring up in this about the concept of you have to make some decision based on what somebody else is going to do, and you don't have perfect information. Like, if it's not an identical copy of you, and you can't predict what this other person's going to do, and then there's real sort of consequences, and it is more interesting for me to think about because there's a lot more going on. Maybe that's just sort of my being more interested in psychology than math bias.
Yeah.
Showing.
Yeah, it's so I guess we're getting back into the original Newcombs, which was what we were trying to avoid because we're talking about Newcomb-like problems. But the point he makes is that as humans, we're all kind of half omegas, mini omegas. We have an impressive array of social machinery available to us that gives us gut level subconscious impressions of how trustworthy other people are. And so,
unless we are autistic and lacking that ability, and then we have to kind of learn it on manual.
But hopefully you have learned it on manual over time somehow.
I think I've, a bit of a tangent, in some domains I think I'm actually better than a neurotypical person because I had to actually learn this thing from the ground up and practice it a bunch, whereas if you're just born with social skills and the ability to read body language, tone of voice, facial expressions, you don't usually have an incentive to try to get better at it.
Yeah.
But that was a tangent.
Okay. Yeah, so that is he gives several examples of Newcomb-like program problems where when he's pitching a project to some of his supervisors, he changes how he pitches it to other supervisors based on what he thinks of their psychology and what they're most likely to be interested in and what's most likely to get the go ahead from them.
Those are examples that I like.
Okay.
That's real life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because you're predicting how other people are going to react based on what you know about them.
Yep.
And he says, sure, those tools can be fooled. First impressions are wrong. Con men seem trustworthy. Shy people can seem untrustworthy. But all of the data is at least correlated with the truth.
I'm not sure that it's true that first impressions are often wrong. My understanding was that people actually tend to have pretty good instincts, and first impressions tend to usually be pretty accurate.
Often doesn't necessarily mean majority. It just means not crazy rare, maybe.
I really wish you wouldn't have used the word often, because that means very different things to very different people.
Yeah.
Okay.
First impressions can be wrong. We'll update his text for him.
Well, let's not tangent again, even though I really want to, because it's interesting. Okay. Humans have a natural tendency to avoid non-Newcomb-like scenarios.
I thought that was one of the most interesting points here, that we actually want Newcomb-like scenarios and we avoid the non-Newcomb-like ones.
Human social structures use complex reputation systems. Humans seldom make big choices among themselves, who to hire, whether to become roommates, whether to make a business deal, before, in scare quotes, getting to know each other. We automatically build complex social models detailing how we think our friends, family, and coworkers make decisions.
Yes. And importantly, we constantly leak information about how we make decisions, and others are constantly using this information. Human decision situations are Newcomb-like by default. It's the non-Newcomb problems that are simplifications and edge cases.
Well, at least as far as, humans trying to predict other humans.
Yes.
Human decision situations that involve, trying to coordinate with other people.
I was wondering about this. The earlier paragraph where it says humans seldom make big choices, like who to hire, whether to become roommates, whether to make a business deal, before getting to know each other. Do you guys, he wrote this just a few years ago. You think that's true?
Yeah. I've seen it in action. I've seen the failure mode of it in action where I had a boss that would hire anybody who, he would go out for beers with and have a good time with, whether or not they were qualified for the job.
Well, the going out and getting the beer is the getting to know part.
Yeah, it's sort of the people voting for the president they'd want to have a beer with. Mm-hmm. Being more willing to want to hire a contractor that you've used before, or your friend that you know is a contractor, rather than some stranger on the internet, even if they have good reviews and lower price.
Well, I'm very willing to work with people that I've already worked with because they are, a known.
Because you got to know them.
Not just because I got to know them, but because I haven't had bad experience with them so far. If they offered me something and delivered it, I at least know that they are trustworthy enough to do that. Whereas a new person, maybe they're great, but I don't know that yet, and I don't necessarily want to take that risk.
Yeah, I think that's the exact thing that they're talking about, where getting to know someone means, like, okay, I have an idea of what level of quality I can expect from this person's work, that they will show up on time, and that they haven't screwed me over. Whereas this other guy on Thumbtack or whatever is pitching less, has good reviews, but I've never met this asshole. What if I hire him and he, like, does shit work or doesn't show up or shows up drunk?
Is this why they still have job interviews?
Probably. I think people value that, like, face-to-face, can we converse with this person? Will they fit in with the company culture? Do they have weird hygiene issues? Like, all that. Yeah.
Because everything that I've heard is, like, interviews don't tell you shit for information. Don't even bother with them. Just look at the resumes and their portfolio of past work and that kind of stuff. And yet, constantly people keep doing interviews and making hiring decisions based off those interviews. And it never has good results, is what I'd heard. But,
Really? Because I feel like, I mean, I've been in the position of having to review applications and help choose employees at a couple of different places I worked. And, I mean, it's like considered standard resume advice to talk yourself up and, like, make yourself as marketable as possible. So it's very hard to get an impression of, like, how qualified a person is, whether they'd be the right person for the job, just by reading, like, their, you know, billboard that's like, reasons you should hire me. I can do computational thinking. I have taken these courses, you know, like...
Maybe I'm just really terrible at reading people, because I have found that interviews with prospective tenants, my impressions have no correlation to how they actually turn out to be as tenants, but just looking at raw things like their income, their credit score, their references, that actually, like, is much more predictive. Like, honestly, I don't even shouldn't need to meet people, I don't think.
But if they showed up 45 minutes late and they're jacked on skag, you might be like, okay, maybe they're not the best tenant, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I think I vaguely recall the stuff you're talking about with interviews, where people overestimate the confidence that they get of, like, an in-person interview and the character judgment or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But going on resume alone, I think, depending on the type of job, but if it's going to be a job where you're working in tandem with other people or, like, on a team, I think at least brief interview is essential. You know, if they show up and they are whatever, they've got swastika tattoos on their face, you might not, like, care if they're really good at the job. You'd rather take somebody who's a little less good at the job that you could.
It's not going to scare off all your customers,
and that you're capable of getting along with and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, some getting to know you level sounds super valuable, and that's because they're leaking all kinds of information about the kind of person they are when you talk to them, right?
And you can totally lie on a resume.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, you could catch the person in it, but, like, there's some things that it's hard to background check. When you were talking about tenants, like, you can, in fact, run a credit score on them and see how much money, like, you know, check their pay stubs, have they been stably employed, et cetera, et cetera. But, like, resumes aren't really the same kind of data. They're just what the person thinks they're good at, which sometimes is not the case. I remember that there was a resume for a person that we ended up hiring and then had to fire because, like, among other reasons, one of the things they had on their resume was, like, I have, like, good computer skills, basically phrased more formally and probably copy-pasted from some resume advice thing. And it turned out that, in fact, they did not. They could sort of barely use Word Suite, you know, like Word, PowerPoint.
Okay, Microsoft Suite.
They couldn't figure out spreadsheets at all, and like couldn't really even use the internet properly. And it was just like just kept laughing about. I wish I could remember the phrase they had used on their resume, because it was just, like, phrased so self-aggrandizingly. And then the person showed up and they were like, "How do I open a tab? I want to open another. When you want a window, but there's another window." Where's the thing? Where are you? And I was just head palming. Yeah. Oh man, you're not gonna last too long. Whoops.
So okay, maybe I'm just, again, the outlier in that I don't know how to model other humans, and I'm bad at that.
I think you probably. I mean, I'd have to see you, and I'd have to observe you in your natural environment, you know, doing stuff. But you don't get a vibe walking down the street if somebody's swinging a stick and yelling at nothing. That, like, oh, I should cross the street. You know, like
I don't think I've ever actually ran into that issue. Like, sure, that is obvious. But, you know, more generally, just the average person that you see never twigs anything for me, and I can't figure anything out one way or another. I don't get gut feelings about people generally.
I don't think that's true. It seems like
that's
you
not
are
entirely true.
a person who can, like... I've had conversations with you about other people where you seem to be able to kind of internally model this person, at least to some extent.
I think, okay, what I mean to say is my gut feeling about everybody initially is this is a great person. Period, always.
I kind of like that. That's
but
how I try
that
to
doesn't work. Sometimes it ends up in bad consequences.
Like, you update when you get data and stuff, but I always try to trust until given reason not to. Now, that might be a bad heuristic.
No, I think actually, in game theoretic terms, the best social strategy is tit for tat or tit for two tats. Like, you screw me over once, or like, I'll forgive you the first time, but the second time, no more cooperation. Seems to be like the one that wins in most of the Matrix things that I can't remember the name of.
Oh, good. My impulse to kindness is borne out by nerds. Excellent. By nerd models.
By math.
Okay, so what we were talking about here. Yes, Newcomb-like scenarios. So this is the big bolded thing that I pulled out that I thought was probably the most interesting overall point here that showed up about halfway through the article. Newcomb-like scenarios simply don't feel like decision problems. People present ideas to us in specific ways, depending upon their model, and most of us don't fret about how others would have presented us with different opportunities if we had acted in different ways. And he gave the example of pitching things to his bosses. I think a probably more common example everyone is familiar with is weighing whether or not to ask someone out. You partially base your decision on, if you know anything about them, what you think they're likely to say. If you think that there's a good chance they're going to say no, you don't even bother because you don't want to like make things awkward and be shut down like that because it, kind of painful.
I think a lot of people are poorly calibrated about that.
I agree, actually. People should probably ask each other out more because it really isn't that big a deal. But continuing on in the fact that people do try to model you and make their decisions based on that, you just are never presented the thing in the first place. The person just doesn't come out and ask you out, so you don't realize that it was a decision problem. And I think that very much ties back to the original Newcomb problem because you aren't ever presented the box with $1 million in it because Newcomb, predicted you and thought that you wouldn't take it.
Omega.
Or Omega, sorry, predicted you
Not
and
the
thought that you wouldn't take it. Yeah. Newcomb predicted you and thought you wouldn't accept his date. So that's why he didn't ask you out. And that's the same. I mean, that's, I think, where it all comes back down to the clear box. If Omega thinks that you're not going to take the clear box, you just never get that opportunity. And so it feels like you're making a decision based on the boxes that are in front of you. You're like, I see the clear box is obviously empty, so I might as well take both and get a little bit of money. But the rub is that it's, it didn't feel like a decision problem because the decision was made earlier before you were presented with the boxes. You made the decision to 2 box when they're clear and one is empty, and that is why it was empty. Whereas if you would have made the decision to be like, okay, even if it's clear and empty, I'm going to just 1 box anyway, and then you would never be presented with the clear empty box problem. You'd just be presented with a full one, and again, it wouldn't feel like a decision problem, even though it was just one step before when you think the decision is happening.
Yeah, I'm the kind of person who would 1 box. So I'm the kind of person who, when presented with a clear box, I would see $1 million in it. Right?
No, because you already said that if you saw a clear empty box, you would just go ahead and take them both, so you got some money.
Right, but I guess if I didn't know... I mean, this is, again, we're getting too high into the constrained thought experiment territory, but I'm imagining where I get a brain scan or Omega reads me before showing me the boxes. Mm-hmm. Is this a 1 or 2 boxer? But yeah, let's not get stuck on that one again.
Yeah.
We can move through with this.
Yeah, thought I had was we were doing in Guild of the Rose the decision theory course and making decision trees, and I was reminded by this of the knowledge that most people don't actually consider the full range of options before they make a choice. You kind of are like, all right, do I quit my job and get a different job, or do I stay at this job? These are the only 2 options. And then they like agonize over that decision, and they don't think about like, okay, or what if I like reached out to my boss to see if I could like switch to part-time if it's like too stressful or something, or can I like stay in the company but shift to a different position because this one's bumming me out or whatever. So
okay, the article says that those causal decision theories fail when they get stuck in traps of no matter what I signaled, I should do the mean thing. Which, like in the token problem, is the mean thing is keeping your token, right? Quote unquote mean is keeping your token. So they're both thinking, well, no matter what the other agent does, I'm better off if I keep mine, without realizing that they are leaking information that they are keeping their token by the fact that they keep the token. And that results in the CDT, causal decision theory, agents sending off a mean signal and missing opportunities for higher payoffs. Because when you're thinking, oh, I'm going to signal trustworthiness and that I'm a great person and that people, can rely on me, but then still defect. Humans generally can't do that. They're leaky. And so even though they think they're signaling good stuff, they're still signaling the mean thing because they're going to do the mean thing. It's like Omega can predict that you would take the 2 boxes. So you can't signal that falsely. And humans oftentimes can't signal things falsely. And because of that, they miss opportunities for higher payoffs.
At least they
can't. Won't present you with the opportunity, or they won't come out and ask you out. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, at least they can't if it's not, literally the first time you met this person and you have zero information. I think people can totally signal trustworthiness and scam you one time, but then there's the tit for tat sort of, like, people don't exist in a vacuum. You are able to observe their behaviors, and no matter how much they say, like, I'm a super trustworthy person, I always pay my debts, but you've seen that, like, they have consistently failed to do this multiple times. It's like, yeah, okay, now, you have shown your revealed preference for being a douchebag here.
Yeah. And again, it doesn't feel like you're making a decision because you just don't have the opportunities presented to you for the higher payoff things, which is the trap, and which kind of sucks. Soros
is how I say it.
Soros says that, by contrast, humans tend to avoid this trap by other means. We place value on things like niceness for reputational reasons. We have intrinsic senses of honor and fairness, which alter the playoffs of the game, and so on. And I think that's what you were talking about with Parfit's Hitchhiker, where you would pay him because it's the honorable thing to do.
Yeah. And I think, and then my, way to satisfy the people who are like, well, good is stupid or whatever. I'm like, well, the guy's clearly insane because he's charging outrageous prices. He might kill me. So there's another pragmatic reason to do it.
Yeah. But your main justification, it seemed like, was basically it's the honorable thing to do because I said I would do it.
And frankly, if he didn't want money, I would try and offer them money, right? Like, it's just because, hey, thanks for your help. So if I wouldn't necessarily empty my savings account to give it to him, but, hey, appreciate it. Here's $100.
And that's the thing, like, the fact that you do have this weird sense of honor that's going to make you give him money even though you don't have to, means that he will drive you back to town. You end up winning the scenario.
You're right.
Because of this quote-unquote irrational sense of honor.
Well, that's why I'm glad you put quote irrational in quotes, because it works out, right?
Yeah.
I have rules, maybe rationalist virtues or rational virtues that I try to follow, and those tend to correspond successfully with positive outcomes, right?
Heuristics, one might say.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, yeah.
Like, if Omega approaches you, go the other way.
Yeah.
Stop this for just one tiny second because I really got to turn on.
Sorry, I had to open.
Have the door
a
open.
little toasty,
I had the door open, but I couldn't hear Jace talking with the being closest to the noise.
Nope.
The sun just came back out anyway, so it might not even be as, like, cool outside as we hope it might be. I mean, I like the sun, but not being overheated is nice too.
Yes.
I like 72 on average. It's just keeps being interesting how different my cold and hot tolerance is on testosterone.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like totally fine in the cold now. Whereas, like, I used to be one of those, like, chronically cold people, even, like, in the middle of summer, wearing, like, a sweatshirt, but be able to, like, hang out in 98-degree heat,
and it's the other way around,
like, first responder fundraiser on the street, just, like, chilling, like, this is fine. Yeah, now I'm like, oh my god, I hate being overheated.
Mm-hmm.
Gives me, like, brain fog and makes me lazy, and there are only so many clothes you can take off.
Yeah, right.
Whereas
you can always put on more when you're cold.
Yeah. So did I get the better end of the bargain? I don't know.
You got a different end.
Yeah, trade-offs, benefits. I don't know if any of that was on the air or not, but yeah. Where are we at?
We are at, he's making this point that whenever someone leaks information about their decision procedures, on a channel they do not control, like facial microexpressions or posture, cadence of voice, etc., that person is inviting others to put them in Newcomb-like settings. And that is one of the reasons why Newcomb-like problems are the norm.
Or sort of like by being a human. I found the word inviting to be interesting there because I don't think it's a conscious choice, but by being a human interacting with other humans, this happens.
Yeah.
I do wonder if either of you have seen any data on this, but this keeps bringing up facial microexpressions, and was that something that was replication crisis or not? I remember there being this like huge news story and pop culture like latching onto the idea of micro expressions and the fact that we all pick up on them subconsciously, and then like you can maybe like, I don't know, some freaks can naturally, or you can train yourself to be able to see them, and then that'll like make you a human lie detector. And I have no idea how much of that is actually true.
It was huge for a few years, and then I think it came out that it was pretty highly oversold. That there are some micro expressions and they can affect things a little bit, but it's not nearly this massive, overpowered thing that it was being made out to be.
There was a so-so television show called Lie to Me.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Where the protagonist was one of these wizards of micro expressions.
Oh, I remember that. The 2 episodes I saw were great.
I remembered I got annoyed with it because they did an episode out of and I don't know how it makes it to I think it was on some streaming service, so it made it like the final cut, and there was episodes out of order. Huh. Like a character that died was in the next episode.
Oh.
And it's like, I don't know how you get all the way through to the point where you could just shuffle it around without any work whatsoever. It's not even like you have to reprint a book, right? Yeah. So that plus the fact that it got redundant, so.
Right.
But
like I said, I only saw 2 episodes.
Yeah, a couple episodes was fun. It was a fun premise.
Yeah.
But yeah,
so
I don't think
recommendation for episodes 1 through
2.
Yeah. 1 through 2. Got it.
It's been too long for me to remember which ones, but yeah, I think my impression of microexpressions is that there's probably something there, but it's oversold in pop culture. But posture, cadence of voice, I mean, there are things that people do.
Yeah, there's a lot of other things. Like you said, clothing, tattoos, how you smell.
I also, just because I'm a contrarian or devil's advocate or something, want to point out that the book Talking to Strangers, Malcolm Gladwell, which we did a whole episode on a while ago, showed a bunch of examples and studies backing them up that, in fact, we're way worse at telling, getting any idea of what people are like or what they are going to do by observing them than we think we are. There's a overconfidence bias that, almost everybody falls into here, because we have things like heuristics about, what people look like when they're lying, for example.
Which are shit.
Yeah. Which don't actually correlate. It's sort of, I don't know, pop psychology has said, you get people,
if they're sweating, they're lying.
Yeah. And the thing is that, the person could be telling the truth, but they're very anxious because they're being interrogated.
Yeah.
Or they're just, a weird person who behaves in weird ways, which a lot of people are weird.
One of the reasons lie detectors are such bullshit.
My favorite example of lie detector, the polygraph test, is that it doesn't tell whether you're lying.
Basically.
It picks up the physiological signs of stress, which you can trigger and ruin the test by flexing your butthole when you're giving honest answers.
Yeah.
And not doing that when you're giving false answers.
Right.
And I remembered on Penn and Teller's bullshit when they're describing this, and then it cuts to them in their little white room that they're, talking at the camera at, and it's we're doing it right now, and so are you. Because it's you're right, I just learned about this, and now, So it was just really funny. It always stuck with me.
On the other side of things, you could be a sociopath or just a very confident liar and totally fool the test by not being anxious at all while you're lying.
Yeah, I think that,
or maybe that's what you were just saying, but
rather
than using, the butthole flexing technique, which lol.
But yeah, I think in general, the heuristics are reliable, which is why they're programmed in, right? We just talked about EvoPsych. In general, these things correlate enough to where it makes sense. If you get to know somebody and you're like, oh, okay, they nervously, shift their gaze away and do all of the quote unquote liar behaviors just all the time, then you can say, okay, this is an atypical case. But the vibe you pick up when people are putting them down, I think if there's anything humans are programmed for as social animals, it's kind of that, right? Yeah. We're pretty good at picking up what other people are putting down most of the time.
Yeah, gut feeling is actually quite well calibrated, and it's based on Bayesian reasoning, just on like a subconscious or like physiological level.
As an example of this, Nate points out that he knows at least 2 people who are unreliable and untrustworthy, and who blame the fact that they can't hold down jobs and nobody cuts them any slack on bad luck rather than on their own demeanors. Both consistently believe that they are taking the best available action whenever they act unreliably and untrustworthy. Both brush off the idea of becoming a sucker. Neither of them is capable of acting unreliable while signaling reliability. And both of them would benefit from actually becoming trustworthy. Which...
the best way to lie is to tell the truth.
That's a funny way to put it, but I agree. I mean, this is where I'm talking about kind of like virtue rationality, right? If I want to be perceived as trustworthy, I can just be a trustworthy person. Mm-hmm. And eventually that will be what people are picking up from me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sounds like a win.
Yeah, he says you can't reliably signal trustworthiness without actually being trustworthy. You can't reliably be charismatic without actually caring about people. And you can't easily signal confidence without becoming confident. I also, God, that thing, you can't reliably be charismatic without actually caring about people. This is going to be like a weird tangent, but like, I feel like I used to really care about every individual person I met and be interested in them. And like, lately that has changed, and I don't know if that was the lockdown or what, but like I just feel myself to be more grumpy nowadays. I feel much more like a grumpy old man than I did 2 years ago.
We've all had a rough couple of years. I think we'll bounce back in another, in the not too distant future.
Yeah, you had also mentioned earlier that you tend to just, when you meet new people, automatically assume this is a great person. So
I always did, but then like you get burned a few times and you start being grumpy.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull myself out of that because, or not exactly the same thing, but I have like anxiety patterns around, do these people really like me? Do they really want me around? They probably think that I'm an idiot and I just say dumb things all the time, and they're just like tolerating my presence because they pity me, and then I have to do all the CBT things again of, have they ever actually said or done anything that suggests that that's the way they feel? Have they in fact acted in the opposite way, such as saying like, hey, you're my friend and I enjoy your company, like, let's, do a chart and then like stare at the data and then try to like lean into the data. Yeah. It's hard to, overcome cognitive distortions.
The really weird thing is that I really do feel less charismatic now. I feel like I'm less funny. I'm less enjoyable to be around. I liked all those things about myself before, and I want to get them back because I enjoyed being, I don't know.
Feeling like socially competent.
Yeah, feeling like people liked having me around. And now I just don't feel that as much, and I think it's very much because of this grumpiness I've gotten, and I want to get over the grumpiness because, gosh, it's really, really fucking fun being able to be in a group of people and just having fun with them.
For what it's
and
worth,
it benefits everyone.
From the outside, you're still fun to be around. I have to just, I'm kind of blaming everything. Everything literally got worse. Food tasted worse. The weather got worse in November 2016, right? Mm-hmm. And then it was bad for 4 years, and then we had, lockdown helped ruin everything else.
Re-ruined it.
So, like, if you're feeling less socially competent, maybe, everyone's out of practice, right?
Mm.
Someone at the Astral Codex meetup that I was just at, like, said this basically what you were saying, but, like, phrased it as, cool, now we're all, like, I've always been socially anxious and awkward, but now everybody's on the same playing field. Which, like, I keep having that same sort of thought, like, oh man, my life is such a mess right now. But at least we're all in this together. Everybody's kind of a mess right now. Like, kind of a weird pessimism, optimism thing. I don't know, sorry. Did I cut you off, Steven?
No. That was the same. It was a good addition there.
Yeah, and then we're basically about done this thing. The end is, compare the advice above to our analysis of CDT,
causal
decision theory, and the mirror token trade, where we say, you can't keep your token while the opponent gives theirs away. CDT, which can't represent this argument, finds the high payoff is unavailable to it. The analogy is exact. CDT fails to represent precisely this sort of reasoning, and yet this sort of reasoning is common and useful among humans.
Yeah, you can't get the benefits of being trustworthy without actually being trustworthy.
Yeah, and like...
You can't get the benefits of showing confidence without actually becoming confident, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sort of. Confidence is one of those things where I think you can get better at it by faking it till you making it, till you make it.
Yeah.
But I still
But the really
think
interesting thing is that as you fake it, you do get better at being confident. Yeah.
Placebomancy. I hear somebody I know is working on an interesting post on that subject. I'm eager to read it.
Yay! Thank you for the poke. I appreciate everyone on the Discord who has sent me pokes. Sorry if I haven't responded back to any of y'all, but I will. Or I will, like, make my best attempt, despite, like, having lots of stuff going on. Love you guys.
So is caution, and this will be some esoteric stuff that maybe someone better educated than me can shine some light on. Is causal decision theory a Bayesian approach? Because I feel like an epistemic decision theory would be more Bayesian. I mean, like look at what's actually happening. And
yes, but causal decision is like strongly related to that because it says if something is in the past, it cannot you cannot affect things in the past. There's no causality going backwards in time, and therefore that's why it fails in these certain situations.
Yeah, I mean,
in the sense that it updates on priors, I guess it's Bayesian.
Yeah, I guess that's where and honestly, I feel like any reasonable decision theory will reliably point in the same direction as other reasonable decision theories, right? Like you'll find
considered reasonable.
I think you'll find edge cases like, you know, mind reading Newcomb problems, but if it's the kind where I'm modeling somebody, you know, I'm pitching to my boss, whatever, and I get a negative result, I'll try a different approach, right? And I'm like, oh, they really like it when I compliment their shoes first, right? Then I can ask for, you know, the moon and get it. So like that's the kind of thing. I mean, that seems like both. Any decision theory would find that as long as you're not just stuck. And maybe I should just leave decision theories out of it because I'm not a decision theorist or a mathematician. But like,
well, he does spend the last few paragraphs here saying basically causal decision theory sucks, and I'm going to give more arguments as to why people should not use it.
Yeah, I saw that and was eager to read the follow-up post, but haven't yet. I don't know.
Does this somewhat address the whole issue about Newcomb and Omega-like predictors in the real world and how this problem does apply?
That's what I was trying to articulate, and sort of. I think so. I mean, the situations are radically distinct, right? In the situation where I'm pitching to my boss some idea, and I want to get a result, I'm kind of more in the Omega seat than I am in the person picking the options.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
he's the one in the person picking the option seat.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the Newcomb problems that we've discussed previously, I'm never in the Omega seat.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're different there, right?
Mm-hmm.
If someone comes to me and my boss finds that, if I ask Steven to do something after he's had coffee, I'm much more likely to get a positive result, then he's the Omega and I'm the person not really getting to decide which box I'm picking.
Chooser.
Yeah. I'm the one who is being given a box and not realizing that I had other options, right?
Yeah. You decided which box he would present you with far earlier in the past when you decided your decision, how you make decisions in general.
I feel like that's just how things work.
Yeah, but I mean, that's basically what Newcomb's problem was trying to present.
I think that is, the premise of this article is that we're always making decisions based on imperfect information and
our ideas of what other people's decision processes are.
Yeah, which, like, sub that for our idea of, you know, whether or not Omega is a perfect predictor and whether we think that's important. It is easier to see why Newcomb's problem was important when you put it in terms of real-world examples, which I think me and Steven, I think, are in agreement that there are some thought experiments that it's hard to engage with in good faith when they don't, when I think you called it, like, spherical Hitler in a void.
I have fun with those, but like you put it, mental masturbation is my favorite term for it. And that's fun. I like it. It's, the navel-gazing, philosophizing is a fun way to pump intuitions or just have spend an hour with fun conversation. But I wonder, like, what you actually learn about anything if, I'm trying to give you, like...
If you can't apply it to your life, then how is it going to be useful ever?
Right. And, like, if you could never,
that's what
ever...
they said about relativity and electricity.
I'm not sure that that's the same argument that I think me and Steven were making.
There's a lot of times people say, like, how can you possibly apply this to your life? That later on it turns out can apply to your life somehow.
Oh, yeah. No, what I'm trying to say is I think that it does apply to your life. It's just hard to see it when it's presented as a god with two boxes, as opposed to you have to choose these two jobs, and here's what you know about both of the bosses, or, like, the company's offering you the job. But there's also this element of uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
That's something I can actually engage with as, like, oh, yes, that's, like, you know, there are... Never mind. I was going to just sort of, like, keep making new synonyms for, like, the first thing that I had said.
No, you're good. I think that I was trying to think of, like, other kinds of thought experiments that you keep adding more and more constraints to try and, like, force the thought experiment to work. A good example might be, like, the rebuttal to utilitarian ethics of, like, well, then you should kill homeless people and harvest their organs and save lives with those organs, right?
It's more of a, like, repugnant conclusion type thing.
Well, some people might just bite the bullet, but usually thought experiments given, like, look, you've got one person in the ICU who could recover or whatever, and then you've got 5 people who all need 5 different organs, and they'll all magically match this person perfectly. Mm-hmm. Not impossible. Okay, sure, let's think about this. And then, you know, well, you're a utilitarian, so you should kill the one person to save the 5, right? And it's like, well, think of the externality causes, though. People come to my hospital and go mysteriously missing.
Yeah.
It's bad for business. It's bad for public trust and health. And I'll probably go to jail. Well, no. Ignore all of those. It's like, well, how can I ignore all of those? Those are all actual things that would actually happen, right? So the more that you, like, try to highly constrain a thought experiment to make it, again, to try and, like, nail someone down on a point, and it's like, okay, yeah, sure. In this perfectly convoluted example that could never, ever happen in reality, I accept your conclusion. In real life, I'll do the thing that makes sense.
I think that's a valid thing to say, though. Like, a lot of people are reluctant to say in this completely, you know, bizarre thing that'll never happen, yes, you should kill the one person to save the 5, because it feels bad, like it violates the moral intuitions, and I think those moral intuitions are there for good reason, because like you said, all the other externalities that are being assumed away. But if we do assume those away, I think it would be better if people were more able to say, yeah, okay, in that case, sure, you're right. As opposed to, nope, you're still wrong anyway because of all these reasons that you already said do not apply here.
Well, like if your goal in delivering this thought experiment is to get people to kind of just be able to train them on how to bite bullets, right? Mm-hmm. Then that sounds valuable. But if you're trying to, like, actually prove something, like people seem to be arguing with, like, the original Newcomb problem presentations, like, because we're not presented with mind readers or perfect brain scanners or whatever that can anticipate my future behaviors, at least yet, there's not a lot for me to, like, worry about in those circumstances, in those thought experiments, right? Yeah,
or learn from again.
Yeah. Do you think? I don't know. In my fantasy science fiction future world, there would be a person who is untrustworthy and kind of sociopathic and terrible, but then he's presented with Newcomb's problem, and he's like, oh, if I want the higher payoffs, I have to become a more trustworthy person, and becomes, like, you know, a good sociopath who is trustworthy. I think that specifically because of Newcomb, but do you think
much like
could never actually happen?
I think that you could come to that conclusion by reading this article, but if that person was presented with, like, the Newcomb's box problem in Omega, I think it's hard to come to that conclusion, because it's hard to see how it applies to your life.
Unless in the sci-fi future there are Omegas running around occasionally, like once a month, they'll grab a stranger off the street and give them this problem. Like, so if these things were happening...
Or maybe in the sci-fi future, they first read the Newcomb's problem article, and then they read the Newcomb-like problems are the norm article. And then their eyes are opened and they have reached enlightenment.
Right. And then they're like, oh, if I want to be seen as trustworthy, I need to be a trustworthy person. Like, that almost sounds...
It sounds kind of ridiculous when you say it that way.
No. I meant that perfectly sincerely. Yeah. Like, this... Maybe some people struggle with that. They're like, why does no one trust me? Is it... And, like, it never quite occurs to them. It's like, oh, because I never return money that I say I will, and I whatever, right? Like, all these things.
Nate mentioned a couple of people that he knows who, in fact, like, have this failure mode, and I also know and have fallen into these myself in the past, you know, where I think the example was, like, why am I always the victim? The world is against me. I have no motivation to want to care about anybody because they clearly don't care about me, and leaning into that means that you're going to see everything through that lens, which means that it's going to turn into a vicious cycle of you not trusting people interpreting you as not trustworthy because your behaviors are bad.
Yeah.
And then you getting more angry at humanity and feeling like more of a victim.
I think a fascinating example of this is Wes from the Discord and the Mind Killer podcast, where he will often say things that, like, when you just read the words, there was one point where I was like, I want to mute this fucker and maybe kick him off my server because, oh my god, I hate his ethics. He's always saying things like, everyone should be selfish, you should be selfish, I don't care about anyone but myself, etc. But, like, the more you get to know him, you're like, oh, yeah, he's full of shit. He's a really nice dude, and he's trustworthy and friendly, and I like him. And he says these other words, but, like, you ignore those because the actual signals that he sends don't match his words, and the signals are more trustworthy than the words he's saying. And so you can totally coordinate and rely on him, even though he says these weird words, because whatever, doesn't matter. He's actually a cool, trustworthy dude.
He
at least in my limited experience with him.
In mine too. He says things that would make you think like, oh, he's the kind of person who will kill me and harvest my organs. And yet he won't. In fact, he'll move mountains to make sure that everyone has all the organs they need without anyone dying, right? It's at least so far.
I don't know about the moving mountains part.
Maybe he's waiting for the opportunity, but I haven't gotten that vibe. Unfortunately, Wes, you seem like a really nice guy. So. despite your best efforts.
My intuition here is that Wes likes to be a contrarian and to have debates about stuff, and so picks unpopular opinions, and then tends to actually have well backed up reasons for them. And I've had a bunch of debates with Wes when after 2-3 hours I'm like, we're arguing, or rather we have the same position here, so we're just angrily agreeing with each other because you phrased it in a troll way.
Yeah.
And it got me again.
I think it's a lovely example of how you will signal trustworthiness by actually being trustworthy, even if you're trying to say things that are untrustworthy. Actually be trustworthy and you will get these higher payoff scenarios.
I wanted to say it because I was dissing on thought experiments earlier. I really, really enjoy them and I find them highly valuable. I think that depending on what people are trying to do with them, sometimes they run afoul of reasonableness. But I'm trying to think of just a couple quick ones because I've got lots that I really love. I mean, the
trolley problem.
Trolley problem is a good one. I was thinking, was it Nozick? Was that the thought experiment, or was that the experience machine?
I don't remember
who it is.
That one's not ringing a bell.
But the experience machine is the one where I picture like a TARDIS. You go in and it'll make you have a happy experience, whatever that means to you. It reads your mind and gives you a happy experience. And then you ask people, would you want to enter this machine? And I think presented that way, people are like, yeah, that sounds fun. Especially a fun way to kill a couple hours. It's like taking drugs, right?
Especially if it looks like a TARDIS.
And then if you ask them, okay, well, so now when you step into the machine, it'll erase your memory that it's a machine and you're plugged into a simulated matrix that is just going to be your perfect utopia, but you won't know that it's all fake.
So then you're just wireheading.
Right. And so a lot of people say no, that they'd prefer not to do that. And that is instructive and informative of how people work and what they value, right? Mm-hmm. The trolley problems, those are fun utilitarian intuition pumps, and then they get kind of silly with well, would you push the fat man in front of the train? And it's like, okay, so you're telling me that there's a guy next to me on an overhang that's overwatching a trolley, which I don't know when the last time anyone ever saw a trolley, but let's just ignore that.
If you live in the Bay, there's quite a few of them.
Okay. There used to be one that went through downtown Fort Collins where I grew up, but the idea that, okay, so there's a overhang on it.
When you were a kid?
I think so.
Cool.
But in any case,
there's an overhang.
Right. And so, the idea is okay, well, how about you push the fat guy, which is still one life versus 5. But then, you have to just ignore the fact, okay, you're telling me that this guy's fat enough that his bulk will stop a train or a trolley, but I can also push him over the edge? And how will I know that he's heavy enough? So you have to push in all these ridiculous things to make it work, when all you're really trying to do is just demonstrate that the important point of no, look, people seem to have a different reaction when they have to directly intervene in a hands-on way. Mm-hmm. And that's valuable, right? Mm-hmm. I had one more thought experiment that I really liked. I mean, I like all of them. They're all great. But like I said, the more you have to stretch them to try and tie all the corners up to where you have to force the person to look at the one thing and see, aha, well now you believe this. There's the
I still like them no matter how much you stretch them. It's just the aha, you believe this part I think should be always left out because that's just not true. We're having fun talking about thought experiments. We're not trying to show people that they're actually secret Hitler.
Exactly. One of my earliest times hanging out with my now wife, I was talking with a guy back in college about, like, we were philosophizing over coffee at a coffee shop. It was tight, talking about, like, the Socratic method and how he did, like, you know, his whole thing was walking around asking a lot of clarifying questions and proving that no one knew what they were talking about, and then that annoyed everyone so much that they all voted to kill him. So one of them would be like, you know, what is justice? Well, justice is paying back what you owe. Okay, so, like, if someone lent you, say, their axe, it's just to give it back. Well, of course, that's the way to do it. Well, what if you knew that when you gave it back, they were going to kill their wife with it? And it's like, well, you know, I maybe...
Well, context matters.
That's the thing, right? And so he and I were going back and forth on this about, like, the reliability of how could we know that? You know, does that really matter? If justice, etc. And my wife, like, looks up from her phone or something, and she's just like, I would just call the cops. And I'm like, see, that's the kind of grounded answer that gets us out of, you know, our heads out of the clouds. And it's like, if I knew with certainty this guy was trying to kill somebody, it's justice and the, you know, the ethics of returning borrowed goods aside, this guy's going to try and kill somebody. Let's do the smart thing, and we can leave our philosophizing aside, you know, if we're trying to decide what we're actually going to do in actual reality, right? Yeah. Now, the Socratic method there is instructive in that people don't have a good one-sentence answer to what they mean to a lot of concepts that they seem to think that they have an intuitive good answer to, right? So there's still value there, but I think it's important to keep your eye on the ball, right? And the ball here being, like, what would I actually do in real life?
Yeah, there's, I mean, thought experiments, I think, are morally neutral. They are tools, and you can use them to give people intuition pumps about ways that they're actually miscalibrated or acting not in their best interests, or just, like, you know, for fun mental masturbation. But, like, I've run into people who use thought experiments as a way to try to, like, trap people into a position they don't actually endorse, and then have a, like, gotcha moment, or, like, prove that they're smarter than them or something, and then that's just doing it in bad faith. And yeah, be responsible with your thought experiments, y'all.
I agree.
Agreed.
Well, shall we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I had fun with this, and I did like that it, again, did what I want thought experiments to do, which is bring it home in real life.
Yeah.
So I can imagine talking to my boss. That stuff happens all the time. Yeah. I can't imagine meeting a mind-reading god that presents me with 2 boxes. I can imagine it, but not in real life. Yeah. All right. Fun on a bun.
Cool. Yeah, who are we gonna thank for things?
I believe it is Steven's go.
Is it? Well, my lucky day.
We want to thank this person for being generous and trustworthy enough, but particularly generous and kind, to give us some of their hard-earned money so that we can feel like we are doing something good for the community as well. So, yeah, thank you for being this person and therefore signaling that you can be this person and getting more higher reward opportunities in the future.
This person is Bella Lee. Thank you so much, Bella Lee. I think I said that too fast.
Bella Lee.
Bella Lee.
Bella Lee, that's your new name.
Anyway, you rock. We appreciate it. Eneasz said all the things. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're thanking people for giving you money in this context, you'll realize why it's so awkward for most of us to struggle through doing it. But that the awkwardness doesn't mean we don't really appreciate it. It just means I don't know how to properly thank you without feeling weird.
Yeah, absolutely. I always blank on the thank the patron, or just like, oh my god, I don't even know what to say. Like, that would capture my gratitude, and you know,
yeah.
Usually, actually saying thank you is fine and well received. I feel like I run into this in other situations too, like when someone, you know, is like, my dog died, and I just run into like, oh no, I'm bad at consoling people because I don't know the perfect mouth words to use that will make them feel better, and like usually it's just like, oh, I'm sorry, dude, that sucks. Like, yeah.
Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to us as well. If you can't donate on our Patreon, there's also the rating and reviewing and helping spread the word and all that good stuff.
Hang out with us on Discord, comment on the subreddit, email us at BayesianConspiracyPodcast@gmail.com.
Yes.
If you really want to. We don't get a lot of those, but once in a while. Anyway, thanks again. This was fun.
Cool. We'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
Oh, wait,
Catch
did we tell them
next time?
Oh, we did tell them the next Less Wrong posts already, right?
Yeah.
I believe we did.
All right. Well, now we're signing off.